A huge sports weekend starts tonight, and we are going to cover it all for you here. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Hope you're doing well on a Thursday afternoon. We have a ton to get to. BJ Bennett and Ben Troop alongside Cam Ushery as well. And Geno Toretta, 1992 Heisman Trophy winner, two-time national champion at Miami, College Football Hall of Famer. He's with the Touchdown Radio Network. He's on the call of Georgia, Arkansas on Saturday. He will join us coming up in about 15 minutes. We'll also chat with Kara Ritchie of 95.3 The Ticket in Jonesboro, Arkansas. As Arkansas State, you have Georgia against Arkansas. Arkansas State taking on Georgia Southern. Mike Griffith, Dog Nation. We'll chat with him in hour 3, but just a ton to get to today on the show. You have football tonight. The Jacksonville Jaguars are in Cincinnati taking on the Bengals. That's a fantastic quarterback matchup. Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow. You have ACC football tonight. You taking on Virginia. That's a big one in the ACC Coastal Division. You have the Braves trying to possibly clinch the division for a 4th year in a row tonight against Philadelphia. And even if that doesn't go Atlanta's way, Philadelphia would have to win out. Atlanta would have to lose out in the final series. And then the Braves would have to remake the Colorado Rockies game up from a couple of weeks ago. And if they win that, you would have a pre-playoff game. So it would take a lot, quite frankly, for the Braves to not make the playoffs at this point, and they can wrap it up, a 4th straight division title tonight against the Philadelphia Phillies. But it's a football Thursday. I think Christian says on the show, it's a football day every day. But you have ACC football with Miami and Virginia, and been an interesting game, Jacksonville and Cincinnati, in that you have two of the young stars at the quarterback position in Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence. And some notes I found on Twitter, this is the first starting quarterback matchup between national championship winning quarterbacks since Vince Young and Matt Leinart back in 2009, which is interesting to think about. And then this is just the second starting quarterback matchup in the common era of the previous 2 years' number 1 overall picks. Obviously, Lawrence and Burrow the year before that. So Jacksonville 0-3, trying to experience a win for the first time with Lawrence and Urban Meyer. But just these two quarterbacks, are they both future superstars? Has Burrow earned that benefit of the doubt yet? And where are you with Trevor Lawrence, Ben, as we'll see him on the big stage in primetime tonight?
I don't think either guy has earned the distinction of superstar yet. I mean, star power, yes. Must-see TV, yes. But I think what happens is, BJ, sometimes we get a glimpse of the future. Joe Burrow, obviously, his season came to an end last year, tearing his ACL. Trevor Lawrence has been covered to being the number 1 overall pick. And people said, if Trevor Lawrence was able to be in that 2020 draft, would he have been the number 1 overall pick and not Joe Burrow? But I think, BJ, sometimes, you have to go through growing pains. I mean, Cincinnati is a team and an organization they picked in the top 10 a lot. I mean, a whole lot in the last 10 years. And maybe a guy like Joe Burrow, is a guy that kind of helped him get out of the dark ages. Trevor Lawrence, I think it's going to come down to him learning how to adjust to the National Football League, because understanding that losing is a part of learning how to win. I do think it's going to be a showcase game for both guys, because the NFL is in a great place. You got Joe Burrow, you got Trevor Lawrence tonight. You got young stars, like Josh Allen, like Baker Mayfield. So I do think that at the end of the day, when you start thinking about where the NFL is going, it's always going to be about the quarterbacks. Take nothing away from the other skill positions or defensive stars like Jalen Ramsey, like Aaron Donald. It's always going to be about these quarterbacks. They are the headliners. Can Trevor Lawrence do for Jacksonville what Cam Newton did for the Panthers? Can Joe Burrow be a headliner for Cincinnati to where, BJ, they start getting Thursday night games, Thanksgiving games, Monday night games, Sunday night games? Because the thing about when you play on Thursday night, that's when everybody's watching. So I do think it's going to be a showcase game for both of these guys tonight. Both teams are obviously struggling, but I think that at the end of the day, I give the edge to Joe Burrow, BJ, because he got his old teammate, Jamar Chase, who did not have a good preseason. Already has like 4 receiving touchdowns. The game seems to be slowing down to him. But BJ, as far as like a glimpse of the future, I definitely think you get a nice glimpse tonight. And going back, what is it? 2019 national championship game. But I'm very impressed with both guys, because at least now, BJ, when I came into the league, guys didn't understand they were already paid. Vince Young didn't understand what came with being a franchise QB. And it used to be a franchise QB, that's your second contract. No, you the franchise as soon as you come out come out of college. But I do think both guys got a bright future. I'm not going to don anybody the next great anything, BJ, because that's taken away from guys. That's the GOAT is still in the NFL. The best thrower of the football is probably still Aaron Rodgers. Kyler Murray is an MVP candidate. Josh Allen's taking his team to playoffs. Baker Mayfield ain't signed his second contract. Dak plays for the America's team. So you got a lot of stars to go around. But as far as young star power, I think both of these guys definitely have it.
Well, and the expectations are there. Whether they should be or not, they are there. Tweet at us at Pigskin Radio. I'm going to ask this question to you guys, Ben and Cam, but tweet at us at Pigskin Radio. I know we've seen a little more of Joe Burrow last year, and he's probably, quite frankly, on a better team, slightly better team right now than Trevor Lawrence. The Jaguars very much rebuilding. They're 0-3. Cincinnati's 2-1. You have a team. You are taking one of these two quarterbacks to be your franchise quarterback. Would you rather have Joe Burrow? Would you rather have Trevor Lawrence? Ben?
Woo! I'd rather have Joe Burrow because Joe Burrow has dealt with a little bit more turmoil than a guy in Trevor Lawrence. Now, Trevor Lawrence is a proven winner. He's won in high school, college, and pro. But the thing about Joe Burrow started off at Ohio State, ended up at LSU, went through some growing pains at LSU. And BJ, I think going into his senior year had a third-round grade. To go from a third-round grade to be the number one overall pick, I want a guy like that. Trevor Lawrence has been that guy since he came out of high school. And that's nothing. I'm not coming at him for that. But I like a guy that's been through something, did it at two schools, understood what it takes to put it together. Because BJ, 2019, LSU is going down in the history books as one of the greatest we've ever seen. That's taking nothing away from the Alabama teams or them 01, 02 Miami teams or that 2013 Florida State team. That 2019 team did things we might not see again. 1,500-yard rusher, two receivers, both of them with 18 touchdowns, Blitnikoff winner, obviously national championship winner, Heisman Trophy winner, Thorpe Award winner. So for me, I would go with a Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow shows you give me the right pieces, man, we can go out here and make some things happen. And Joe Burrow wasn't one of those guys that was fretting because he was going to Cincinnati. He was like, look, man, I'm raring to go, and I think I could be the guy that could take this franchise to the next level. So love Trevor Lawrence, but I still would go with old Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I gotta agree with Ben on that. I'll go with Joe Burrow because of the simple fact I think his feel for the game is just a little bit better. I like Trevor Lawrence. Don't get me wrong. I think he'll be a terrific quarterback. He's going to go through some growing pains this year. But Joe Burrow, if you watch him play, even before he got injured last year, he was setting the league on fire without Jamar Chase, without a good O-line. Obviously, he got hurt behind that O-line. But, I mean, if you look at him this year, outside of the Bears game, he threw 3 interceptions in that game. He's, I want to say, 5 touchdowns and 0 picks outside of that Bears game. They're 2-1. The Bengals are 2-1. About to be I'm sorry, BJ. I know you love your Jaguars.
Whoa, about to be 3-1. We're calling it a couple of hours before kickoff.
I'm calling it. I'm loving the Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow connection. It's giving me, LSU vibes from in college. But man, Joe Burrow, he reminds me of Tony Romo, and I'm not even a huge Tony Romo fan, but I mean, he improvises, can move out the pocket, throw on the run. He can do whatever you want, whatever you need. So I definitely like Joe Burrow for the future. But Trevor Lawrence, he's close. He's not too far.
And we'll get into this later, but I wonder if Trevor Lawrence is being used right. I know a lot of people have talked about his touchdown to interception ratio. Oh, he's got 7 picks. Is he going to break the record set by, and that's not a good record, the record set by Peyton Manning? But Ben, I was looking at this, and I've said a couple of times on the show, I don't understand why Jacksonville's not featuring James Robinson more, who is one of the better running backs in the league, might be the best player the Jaguars have. Right now, Trevor Lawrence, in the first 3 games of his rookie season, is in the top 10 in the league in pass attempts. And for frame of reference, Trevor Lawrence has more pass attempts than Matt Ryan, Dak Prescott, and Pat Mahomes. And I understand you want to get a rhythm. You want to develop relationships between he and your wide receivers. You have very good wide receivers. But Trevor Lawrence is throwing the ball more than Pat Mahomes. I mean, isn't doing that kind of opening the door for these interceptions and some of the struggles we've seen? Why not run the football first with Robinson and this early in his career use Lawrence as more of a complementary piece in the passing game?
Because BJ, I think that's the power of perception. When you think about a guy like Trevor Lawrence, we've been hearing about him for the last 2 years, for like he's going to be the number 1 overall pick and he's going to go to Jacksonville. Urban Meyer is, I think what's hurting Trevor Lawrence the most is Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer is a rookie head coach. And because both guys have had tremendous success, they thought that, listen, man, you just put us anywhere, we're going to be successful. No, we forget the surrounding pieces. Trevor Lawrence is being used like a first round running back, like an Alabama, like the old adage of the Alabama running backs. You use them so much that by the time that you get any good use out of them, their best years are behind them. Trevor Lawrence can make all the throws. You don't got to justify that by having him throwing the ball 30 or 40 times a game. The more you do anything makes you susceptible to more failure at it. So the more you throw the football, these DBs are like, look, man, you may be making throws that you shouldn't be making. You may not be taking what the defense is giving you. Trevor Lawrence is not going to make it. He's not going to complain about it. He's going to take whatever the game plan gives him. But you got a top 100 player voted on by the players in James Robinson that was a good player on a bad team last year. So you got a guy who is not front running, is not watching box scores. And I just think for me, BJ, I do agree. You want to get the only way to get the best out of a player is to see how he responds in a adverse situations, not seeing how many times, because we get caught up in the 300 yards, 400 yards. But if it doesn't count the wins, it's a usage rate. And right now his usage rate is high, but it's not effective.
Can I say something? Can I interject just for a second?
Yeah.
Okay. I love Urban Meyer. Don't get me wrong. I really do. I love Urban Meyer. He's one of the greatest college football coaches, I think, top 5, top 10, whatever you want to call it. I think Trevor Lawrence, he needs a more kind of like seasoned coach, a veteran coach in the NFL for him to progress. Urban Meyer is a good coach, but I don't think that was the right fit. A rookie head coach in the NFL and a rookie in the NFL with a really bad team. Trevor Lawrence, he's going to struggle for the next couple of years. Not because he's not a good player. I just think you have to put him in the right system, right scheme to work on his game, to progress his game. And I just don't know if Urban Meyer is that guy. See, at Ohio State, you just recruit the talent and you're just playing against who you play against. Cool. But in the NFL, these guys have been there for years. They've been homing on their skills for a long time. You just can't recruit and think you're finna come in there and win. And I like Urban, but man, I think Trevor Lawrence, and I know it's just 3 games in, it's a process, but I could just see it. I could foresee it. He may need somebody that's just a little bit more seasoned as a coach to come in there, or a better, highly talented offensive coordinator.
Well, it's a fair point. You think about Trevor Lawrence learning on the fly. So is his head coach at this level. And I think the spotlight's going to be on. Listen, you're not talking about 2 Super Bowl contenders, I don't think, here, but a lot of people are going to be watching Jacksonville, Cincinnati tonight, Thursday Night Football. We'll see how Urban Meyer does. We'll see how Trevor Lawrence does. You also have some ACC football tonight, Miami and Virginia. Speaking of the U, one of the great quarterbacks in college football history will join us next. The 1992 Heisman Trophy winner Geno Toretta is going to be on the call of Georgia, Arkansas on Saturday. We'll chat with him when we come back. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Georgia, Arkansas, suddenly a top 10 matchup nationally. ESPN College Game Day going to be in Athens. You're talking about a game with, of course, SEC implications, but national implications. Ben, when you look at where these two teams are ranked, does this feel like a game with playoff relevancy? I mean, Arkansas's got one of the best resumes in the country. Georgia maybe has been the most impressive team in college football. How would you kind of describe the backdrop for this game that wasn't a big deal a month ago, but is now suddenly a top 10 contest?
I think it shows. I think it shows, BJ. I mean, just how much teams that don't play Georgia benefit from them. Arkansas is a team that is obviously, overperforming right now. BJ. I mean, listen, we all are overachievers in some regard. So I'm not trying to come down on Arkansas, but I think that's what makes this game kind of more dangerous to me for a Georgia team, because aren't we waiting, BJ? Aren't we waiting for Georgia to look human on defense? Aren't we waiting for Georgia to kind of look like they got some kinks in the armor? Because what we don't talk about enough with the Georgia team is the better offense this weekend is Arkansas. The better defense this weekend is Georgia. The better skill position player on offense is Arkansas. The better overall team might be Arkansas. Now that doesn't mean they're gonna win the game. I'm talking about, I'm talking about like shoulda, coulda, wouldas. But I think that's why Kirby Smart coaches the way he coaches. People go, why is he so like uptight all the time and never comfortable? And you see why, BJ. I mean, think about it. I believe Florida benefited last year from a Georgia team because you know what it takes not to beat them, but to compete with them. So yeah, I do think there's going to be a more of a dangerous team than we give it credit for, BJ. But I will say this: Georgia doesn't look down the road. Georgia does have an Alabama vibe to it as far as like how they prepare for a team. But BJ, I don't think we are appreciating what Sam Pittman is doing. I mean, is Sam Pittman on a Dan Mullen type run? Because Dan Mullen got to be the head coach at Florida because of what he did at Mississippi State. Sam Pittman was the premier offensive line coach in the country, but what he's doing in only 2 years at Arkansas, you got to respect that.
Yeah, and Sam Pittman, obviously former offensive line coach and assistant head coach at the University of Georgia, so probably going to be an emotional game for him. But with us now to talk about it, we'll be on the call of Arkansas, Georgia on the Touchdown Radio Network coming up this weekend. One of the great players in college football history, the 1992 Heisman Trophy winner, two-time national champion, college football Hall of Famer, the great Geno Toretta with us on the program. Geno, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Doing wonderful. So Arkansas, Georgia, a top 10 matchup nationally. I mean, we've seen Georgia maybe even exceed expectations through the first month. In your mind, what's been the biggest key for Arkansas, and what type of team are they bringing to Athens on Saturday?
Well, I think what we're seeing, especially not just with Arkansas, probably some other teams in college football, I think you're seeing the benefit of transfers, the transfer portal, if you will. You're also seeing the benefit of the super seniors, players that are good players that had an extra year to come back, and that experience makes a world of difference. And I think that Sam Pittman has stuck to his guns. He's got some great offensive linemen. That's his roots as the O-line coach. They pound the ball on the ground. And Barry Odom, has always been a great defensive mind when he was the DC at Missouri before he was the head coach. So I think they've benefited from some of those transfers in, and Sam's done a nice job recruiting, so he had a good base, and then you get the super seniors to stick around, so they've got a lot more experienced group than they had in the past.
Geno, the quarterback position, I mean, from the time you played till now, when you look at how much more is on these guys, you talk about the super seniors, but is there more pressure on these quarterbacks now? Obviously, you look at these wide open offenses with the spread offense, but how much more pressure is on these quarterbacks to not just come ready out of high school, but come ready to kind of get these teams to the promised land?
Well, the crazy thing now is just the amount of pressure they put on the kids, not to just be, hey, you can be an option quarterback. It used to be, hey, the guys at Oklahoma and Nebraska, they ran the wishbone and they ran it well, and maybe the passing game lacked. Guys that came to Miami, Florida State, we were drop back and we were throwing the ball. Now you have to be equally adept at being able to run the RPO speed option, as well as being able to sit in the pocket and delivering balls down the field. I think that one thing that they've done with the speeding up of the number of plays, we used to run probably 65 plays in a game, and we thought that was successful, and it was most of the time. but these guys are running almost 100 plays a game, and they're trying to just essentially run plays so fast that defenses can't substitute. They kind of makes it very simplified from the standpoint, empty the backfield. Defense can't disguise a lot when you're in no backs or one backs like we used to do. But they put a lot of pressure on the quarterbacks now just because, I can remember doing games with Lamar Jackson and he'd rip off a 60-yard run, and he had to be exhausted. And if that was a running back, he'd probably hit his helmet and say, hey, I need a breather. If it was a wideout made a big catch, he'd hit his helmet, I need a breather. The quarterbacks never get to hit their helmet and say, hey, I need a breather for a couple plays. So the conditioning of the quarterback is also just amazing to me right now.
And talking about the quarterbacks, Georgia's JT Daniels entered the season with Heisman Trophy talk. Has been good. Clearly, Georgia's dominating everybody they play. What do you see when you watch JT Daniels, and does he need to be a guy on Saturday that maybe has that 300-yard passing game?
Well, I think I don't know if he needs to have a 300-yard game. I think Georgia's got an unbelievably talented backfield. So I think they want to pound it and run it first. I think also, he only played one quarter last week against Vanderbilt. Now he has a lat injury. He had an oblique injury, which I would have to assume that the oblique has influenced the lat, and that can't be good. It can't be pain-free throwing the ball with a lat injury. So I think that he's got some issues there. I think Henderson on the other side of the ball, or Jefferson on the other side of the ball, he's got issues as well. I mean, he's a little banged up. So both these quarterbacks kind of come into this game banged up. I think that Arkansas has to rely on Jefferson having a big game, whereas Georgia's defense is so good. I think Daniels can be manage the game, not turn the ball over, and I think they have personnel that's right up there with Alabama, which is better than most of college football right now.
Geno, what the evolution of college football? I mean, obviously you're going to be on the call this week when you talk about Arkansas and Georgia, but how much bigger can college football get? You look at the fact that Oklahoma and Texas coming over to the SEC. I think the biggest. I mean, I never ever thought I would be watching coaches in college, making $8, $9, some $10, $11 million a year. How much bigger can college football get? And are we already, on our way there?
I think we're definitely already on our way there. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I think Dennis Erickson might have made a couple $100,000 before he left Miami to go to Seattle. It was always the big money was in the NFL, but college football is right there. You have, now we have the Power 5 conferences, so it's kind of like those schools and those 5 conferences they're going to dominate the money coming in from TV. But you look at it, it's just the content around college football. I mean, people can't get enough of it. People can't get enough of the Saturday games. You can't get enough of talking about the games the next Saturday. Who's going to win the Heisman Trophy? Who's going to be the first pick in the NFL draft? But I think that's all part of it, and I'm also happy that the players now with NIL can actually make a few dollars and be able to buy themselves a couple nice dinners while they're in school.
The legendary Geno Toretta here with us on 3 and Out, and college football this season. You've seen some upsets at the top. Ohio State already has a loss. Of course, Clemson has not looked good. A couple of losses. We've seen the same programs dominate college football during the playoff era. Certainly, Alabama is still the favorite. Georgia, who we'll see this weekend in a top 10 game right there. But do you think there's maybe room for some new names this season, ultimately, in the college football playoff based on this start to the season?
Well, I think we'd have to say that, right? I mean, with Clemson already having lost twice and one of them to NC State, Ohio State with the home loss to Oregon. So you would expect probably some names that aren't in there, that haven't been in there in the last few years. I think that's also the great thing about college football is we normally had that. I think before probably the last, I say the pre-Saban era where he's in it every single year, there was a lot of turnover at the top. And when teams, lost their star quarterback or their star defensive players, you had a drop off. And Saban has just been phenomenal. He's lost quarterbacks, he's lost players, defensively, offensively. He's turned over coaching staff probably 5 or 6 times, and is still right there competing for a national championship every year. But that is, an anomaly, and I think that's what we're seeing kind of with Clemson. You lose Trevor Lawrence, first pick of the NFL draft. Travis Etienne, probably one of their best players the last several years. Running back, also a first-round pick. You lose those 2 players, very hard to replace them. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing at Clemson, why there's a bit of a drop-off. It takes time to learn offenses, learn nuances of it, and just play the game. It's different when there's live bullets flying around on Saturdays between the white lines. But I think that's why, to me, college football delivers every single Saturday. Things that you think are odds makers, thinking somebody's a 2-touchdown favorite and they lose at home. I mean, that's college football in its finest.
College Football Hall of Famer Geno Toretta, our guest here on 3 and Out with the Touchdown Radio Network. You will hear Georgia and Arkansas coming up this weekend. Geno, thank you so much for the time. Enjoy the game on Saturday.
Anytime. Looking forward to it.
And it's going to be a heck of a game. I do think, to Geno's point there, Ben, Arkansas probably needs the big play. Arkansas probably needs the big play more than Georgia. I think if this game is low scoring, that plays right into Georgia's hands. Like Geno was talking about, a dominant defense. I think you have incredible depth at the running back position. I don't know that you have to have, like I asked, 300 yards from JT Daniels. You can control the game with your defense, field position, and running game. Arkansas's got to have a home run or two. Arkansas's got to have a couple of big plays. Schematically, let's be Sam Pittman for a minute. Schematically, how do you try? I mean, how do you move the football against this defense?
Dan Lanning, BJ, DC, defensive coordinator for Georgia is definitely gonna come. He's gonna come with some pressure. He's gonna force you to do what you want to do quicker than you want to do it. I mean, Jefferson and Burks, man, they got to be electric. They don't necessarily have to go for over 100 yards for Burks and those guys. I mean, Burks and Jefferson, but BJ, the stars got the line. You already know who the best players are for Arkansas, and they got to go out there and make it happen. So if you are Sam Pittman, you telling Jefferson, look, if you see one-on-one with Darion Kendrick and Trey, you got to go out there and convert to it. You got to go try to give us some 50-50 balls. But I think if you're Arkansas, don't overthink it. Like, I think we put too much on, the fact that Arkansas, forget where they at now. What did it take to get here? This is years in the making to even be in the top 10, BJ. So let's give these guys credit for making this game worth watching outside of the fact it's Georgia and Arkansas, a top 10 matchup. But if you are Georgia, you want to still be on your P's and Q's, BJ, because what we're seeing from the Georgia defense, it's on a historical level. And I know what they did last week against Vanderbilt is you just shake your head. But if you are Arkansas, BJ, play loose. You let your instincts take over, and if you could just make some drives last a little longer than you wanted to, that might play in your favor because it's gonna be. I mean, you're talking about the defense is about as stingy as I've seen in a long time for them Georgia Bulldogs.
Number 1 team in the country, they have a tough game. Number 2 team in the country, as we've talked about, they have a tough game. Could one of them be an upset? Could both of them be an upset in the SEC? We'll discuss that next. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is a spotlight Saturday in the SEC. Alabama taking on Ole Miss in Tuscaloosa, Georgia hosting Arkansas in Athens. And both of those games, the spreads are pretty considerable, but I think there's at least some discussion around the country that the top-ranked team in the country, second-ranked team in the country, could be in a four-quarter game. So I'll ask you guys this. I like asking the questions. More likely upset this Saturday. You got to pick one. You're not calling for either one necessarily, but which would be more likely on Saturday? Arkansas goes into Athens and beats Georgia, or Ole Miss goes into Tuscaloosa and beats Alabama?
Ooh, man. Now, I will say this, BJ. Ole Miss has all the ingredients you need, starting with the quarterback position in Matt Corral. You got the play caller in Lane Kiffin. You got a guy who understands Alabama's culture and what those guys want to do. But isn't it in Nick Saban's contract that his assistants aren't allowed to beat him? Because the last time I checked, none of them have done it. For me, I would go with Georgia. Why? Because I've seen it before. Now, I know the 2018 Georgia team ain't got nothing to do with the 2021 Georgia team. I mean, some of those guys are probably still in high school, still get recruited. But Sam Pittman understands the Georgia culture. Sam Pittman understands Coach Lanning. Why? Because the offensive line, coach, they are really, really good knowing about these defensive coordinators because you got to deal with those guys, in preseason camp and all during the year. So for me, I go with the team who nobody thinks can get it done, and I think that's going to be Arkansas. I mean, Traylon Burks and KJ Jefferson, those guys. I mean, BJ, those linebackers. I just think that whenever we make it such an insurmountable task for one team to get it done, that's what they use to feed them, to feed off of to go out there and get it done. So I know that Nick Saban has in his contract, and his former assistant can't beat him, and he's had a full year to kind of see what Matt Corral doesn't do well, not what he does do well. But I think it's going to be Arkansas. They've scratched and clawed to get in this position to be in the top 10 to make this game a top 10 matchup. So for me, and I'm not saying that it's going to be easy, but I would pick Arkansas over them dogs.
This is really tough. And I say that because at some point in time, Coach Pittman was with Kirby Smart. Lane Kiffin was obviously with Coach Saban. So it's some familiarity there. This is pretty tough. But I'll actually go Ole Miss. And here's why. Ole Miss actually gave Alabama a run for their money last year. Yeah, I know the score doesn't indicate. I want to say it ended like 63-47 or something like that.
Yeah, but they put up points at will, basically.
At will. At some point in time, it was like 45-45 at the beginning of the fourth. It was a really close game. Granted, they're going to be at Tuscaloosa this Saturday, but I give Ole Miss a better shot because I just feel like they're a little bit ahead of schedule than what Arkansas is. That's crazy to say because Arkansas is ranked higher. But I think that Georgia defense is really good, and it's going to make KJ Jefferson really uncomfortable. And that Alabama defense is good, but we saw with Florida they could be had. And Matt Corral, he's upped his game. He's just had a 7-touchdown game not too long ago. I think he could come in there. He's a veteran quarterback in a hostile environment, and I've seen it happen to Bama before. They lose to kind of mobile quarterbacks, and they've lost at home to it was either Chad Kelly or Bo Wallace, and then Johnny Manziel. I would go with Ole Miss. I think Alabama and Georgia is going to win, but if I had to choose, I'll go Ole Miss. I believe in Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think I'm picking either upset, but if I had to, I would go Ole Miss. And I think here's why. I was talking about this a little bit earlier. Okay, when you look at what Ole Miss is really good at and you look at what Ole Miss is not good at, I think we hear about matchups all the time in basketball, like in the NCAA tournament. Oh, this team might not be better than this team, but it's a good matchup. And I look at Ole Miss, they're not great defensively. And I kind of feel like if that's where the strength of your team is, that's a waste against Alabama. Because I don't care how great your defense is. And maybe we see Georgia and Alabama in the SEC title game. But for the most part, I don't care how great your defense is. Alabama's going to score. You're not stopping Bryce Young. You're not stopping Jamison Williams, John Mechie. Robinson's back healthy. And I don't think having a good defense really helps you that much. There may be a generational defense like Georgia, but I don't think having a good defense really helps you. It's kind of wasted. You have to be able to score. You have to be able to score, like you said, Cam. Alabama scored 63 on Ole Miss, but Ole Miss got close to 50. And there were a couple of turnovers late. I look at Ole Miss as being the type of team that can present some matchup problems for Alabama. Young in the secondary, talented, but young. You're going to spread the field. Lane Kiffin knows Nick Saban, much like Sam Pittman knows Kirby Smart. And I also think the mobility of Matt Corral could be a factor. You mentioned Cam, Johnny Manziel, Chad Kelly. You're talking about guys that could make some plays running the football. You've seen that at times. And not Chad Kelly, Matt Corral had 4 touchdowns rushing in the game against Tulane. And keep in mind, Ole Miss had an off week last Saturday. Then a lot of people say that can be a big deal, extra preparation. Ole Miss coming off of a bye week. Does that play into this at all?
It does because they're coming in fresh. I mean, anytime you get extra time to be able to go up against a team like Alabama is only going to help you. But understand this: Alabama has seen and done it all, right, BJ? They've seen it all. They know they've been the hunted and the hunter for so long that they say, okay, we love a challenge. Now, another thing you have to understand with Alabama: what happened in Florida ain't got nothing to do with Saturday. What happened before you played them ain't got nothing to do with when you play them. Alabama, what they do well is this: okay, we can be had, but you got to find the holes in our defense. We could be beat, got to do it 4 quarters. As you mentioned, Cam, last year it was 45-45 at one point. Who won that game? See, Alabama, in a sense, they really don't care how they win, BJ. They don't need the style points. They've earned the benefit of the doubt, and they've been in this position a long time. The X factor is going to be Bryce Young. Bryce Young, 15 touchdowns, 1 interception. That means he's very, very efficient with the football. You add Brian Robinson back to the and BJ, once again, a defense, Georgia might be the best defense in the country. Alabama ain't far behind, and we just ain't been talking about them. But I do think Alabama loves this type of test, to be able to have a quarterback that's good enough to go out there and put up points against you. It's not, can you move the ball? Can you do it when it matters? It's not, can you score? Can you score to win the game? And that's the hardest thing to do against Alabama. And once again, if Lane Kiffin wasn't an assistant under Nick Saban, I would give them more of Nick Saban. He ain't with that, because everybody think I know about the Nick Saban system. Now, you know, but you don't know everything. I know everything about you, Lane. I still got some things in the toolbox. So I think it's going to be a better game than most. But
who's going to break the curse, though?
That's
what I'm wondering. Who's going to break it?
If it's going to be anybody, it's probably going to be Kirby. But BJ, I guarantee you this: if Kirby beats Alabama, if Kirby beats Nick, it won't be for it all. It'll be for the SEC championship game.
Okay, so just to confirm, Ben Troop, Gator legend, just picked Kirby Smart to beat Nick Saban in the SEC title game and win the national championship.
No. I said if. I'm gonna tell you, I said if, because Nick Saban, old Saint Nick, sometimes he want to hand out gifts, right? Handed it out to Tim Tebow and them guys back in the day. Gave Johnny Manziel, gave Chad. Is it Chad Kelly? From Ole Miss one. So guys can do it, but this thing, BJ. When's the last time Nick Saban lost to anybody in the national championship that was an assistant of his? Oh, that's right. They've never played him in the national championship. So, BJ, you said it's not a matter of, you said whenever Alabama loses, they're not going to lose again. So if he loses the SEC championship game, whoever beats him, congratulations, because we will not lose
That's
twice.
what I'm worried about, man. That's my biggest fear this year as a Georgia fan. I'm sitting here like, can we go undefeated and just lose the SEC championship? Because you're not beating Alabama twice. We saw it with LSU.
Yeah, no chance. Yeah.
Remember that slugfest? It was 9-6. LSU won at home. Played them in the national championship, got boat race 22-0. It's just that simple. I'm scared as a Georgia fan right now, because we actually look decent. We look good, and we play them in the SEC championship game. We win that. We're not beating them in the national championship game. I know that for a fact.
Hey, it is tough. It is tough to go undefeated, as we know. And Georgia, take it game by game. I know we're talking about what could happen in the SEC championship game, what could happen in the playoffs. Got to get through Arkansas, top 10 matchup first. BJ Bennett, Ben Troop, Cam Ushery here with us. We'll come back with more 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Ben, we are happy to announce that your book, Uncommon and Unfinished, the Ben Troop story, is out, is available. Folks can get an autographed copy, bentroop84.com. You can buy it online anywhere books are sold, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, Target, Amazon, etc. But it's out. You and I have our copies. I mean, I know I was driving you crazy because for a couple of days I was like, I got to have it. I got to have the book. And we have it. It's been a thrill to work on it. It's been an honor, and want people to check it out. I'm excited for people to learn more about you. bentroop84.com. And we're going to have actually a book signing in Swainsboro at East Georgia State College from about 11:30 or so to 2 coming up on Saturday. So if folks are going to be in the area, we would love to see them at East Georgia State College in Swainsboro for a book signing for Uncommon and Unfinished, the Ben Troop story.
Yes, very proud of the book, BJ. I mean, I think you said it best. I mean, when you're embarking on something of this magnitude, you just want to be able to know that you've given it all you can. No regrets, which I don't have any. I'm very humble to have Uncommon and Unfinished, the Ben Troop story with BJ Bennett out at bentroop84.com. But yes, as you mentioned, October 2nd, from 11 to 2 at East Georgia State College, we'll be doing the first ever book signing. Myself, UBJ, Entree Drama, who wrote the foreword, as well as the came up with the title. We're gonna be just coming out to East Georgia State College. Hope the city comes out and get you a book, get a chance to shake some hands, see some old friends, family members, people that had a lot to do with this. I mean, a lot of times when you embark on a journey like writing a book, you think the journey. Sometimes BJ, we underestimate the journey, but I am looking forward to it. I mean, I've won already. To me, it's not about how many books I sold, even though a lot have been sold. It's about the fact that, this is a culmination of saying thank you to a city that I was born and bred in, and a city that's near and dear to my heart. I do consider myself one of Swainsboro finest, but I'm just really looking forward to Saturday to be able to shake some hands, tell people thank you. And hopefully, BJ, man, when they read this story, they'll see a lot of themselves more than they reading about me, and they'll realize that my story is encompassed within their stories as well. But yeah, Uncommon and Unfinished, the Ben Troop story, available now at bentroop84.com. Also available everywhere books are sold, as well as you can also go to iBooks and eBooks if you do want to get it digitally as well as Kindle. But yeah, October 2nd, East Georgia State College, Ben Troop, as well as myself, BJ Bennett, and Entree Jumper. We're gonna be signing books out there, man. But it should be a lot of fun.
All right, quickly, rough estimate. How many autographs have you signed in your life?
Wow. To actual people, I don't know. Maybe 5, 10,000, maybe 10,000 people. I mean, I've done a lot, but in my lifetime, I mean, easily, probably about 80,000 probably people, easily.
So there you go. We'll make it 80,000 and a few more, hopefully a lot more coming up on Saturday, but bentroop84.com. We'll come back, take 3. Kara Ritchie, 95.3 The Ticket in Jonesboro, Arkansas. We'll talk Georgia Southern, Arkansas State. A lot to come. 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network, ESPNCoastal.com. Big night tonight. The Atlanta Braves will try to win the National League East for the 4th consecutive season. They can do that with a win over Philadelphia. The magic number is 1. So they obviously play tonight, but if it goes to the final series of the regular season, 1 Braves win or 1 Phillies loss would give the Atlanta Braves a division title, and we'll see if they can do it tonight, coming up against Philadelphia at home. Here in hour 2, we'll chat with Kara Ritchie of 95.3 The Ticket in Jonesboro. We'll get a preview of Georgia Southern Arkansas State from the Arkansas State perspective. Former Florida State quarterback James Blackman, the quarterback at Arkansas State, and they've been scoring a lot of points, so we'll get some information on Arkansas State coming up. Later in the show, Mike Griffith, Dog Nation, will join us. Georgia getting ready for Arkansas. A couple of guys looks like they're healthy, going to be ready to go this weekend. We'll chat with Mike coming up in the final hour. And then tonight, Jacksonville at Cincinnati in the National Football League, and Miami against Virginia in the ACC. So a big football night as well. But we'll send it back to Cam in studio as we take 3 this afternoon.
All right, take 3, fellas. First question. Anthony Richardson is now healthy for the Florida Gators. How much should he play when they play Kentucky this Saturday?
I think you have to make an effort to get him in there, Ben. And look, Emory Jones has shown a lot of resiliency, was really good, proficient against Tennessee, 2 touchdowns passing, also had over 140 yards rushing. He's the starter. He's earned that. Played really well against Alabama, played even better against Tennessee. But I look at a guy like Anthony Richardson, kind of just a playmaker that you have to give opportunities to. Anthony Richardson, I know he's only played in 2 games. I get that. But he's averaging 17.5 yards per pass attempt, and he's averaging 25 yards per rush. So I think to keep Kentucky off balance, you get him in there, maybe a series or 2 in the first half, play it by ear kind of in the second half, how the game's going. But I think give the Kentucky defense something extra to worry about, something extra to think about, and I think you get Anthony Richardson in this football game. Absolutely.
I think you have to play him just from a rhythm standpoint. I do understand that Anthony Richardson, BJ, provides that spark, right? He's a guy that's a big play waiting to happen, and he makes everybody on defense nervous. I mean, you still got the full nuance of the offense when you look at what he does with his legs, and obviously you look at what he did against USF. And I'm not saying that USF is Kentucky. I'm not comparing the two. I want to see how much he's progressed, because I do understand when you got a guy that's as gifted as Anthony Richardson is, he is a Robin. He's not Batman. He doesn't have to make sure the flow of the game stays that way. That's more Emory Jones. But yes, I think you do get him in, because I do think that this is going to be a recipe for Florida moving forward to be able to have that two quarterback system. And Dan Mullen's best year as a coordinator, in my opinion, he had Tim Tebow, he had the Chris Leak, and I'm not comparing Emory Jones and Anthony Richardson, Chris Leak, and Tim Tebow, but he knows that this can work. So yeah, I think you just put him in for a momentum standpoint. But how much is he more running the offense compared to him being a highlight reel? I'm looking forward to see that.
This is tough, but I have to agree with y'all. Anthony Richardson should get a lot of playing time. I haven't chopped it up with you guys enough yet about college football, but I'm big on, if you have a senior at quarterback, Emory Jones, and you have Anthony Richardson, a quarterback who's a freshman, I think you start your freshman, you try to build that foundation with your new guy coming in, if you haven't really found a foundation with the upperclassmen. And he's showing some prowess, he's showing some promise, and I mean, dude's 6'4", 230. I mean, he's huge, man, and he got a cannon for an arm. He can move his legs, and I think this is a perfect week. Kentucky, we respect you, but I think it's a perfect week to fit him in and try to see, where you could go with him, because Emory Jones is a good quarterback, but I think you need a different spark. Now, for question number 2, guys, take 2. Which quarterback needs to have a bigger game this Saturday, KJ Jefferson or Matt Corral?
I think it's KJ Jefferson, and that might feel like the wrong answer, but here's why. I think that Ole Miss offensively has playmakers, all over the field beyond just Corral, and I'm double checking it right now. Ole Miss is second in the SEC in rushing. Arkansas is third, but there's a pretty substantial difference. Ole Miss is averaging, this is crazy, Ole Miss is averaging 299 yards rushing per game. And I'm trying to check it nationally. Yeah, that's good for 4th nationally. So Ole Miss has the 4th best rushing attack in college football, and I know Corral's a part of that, but I think you can turn to Jerrion Ealy, one of the better running backs in the country, and maybe have enough of that back and forth offensively to hang in the game. And I also think Corral is going to get a couple of big plays that he converts, even if he doesn't have a great game. So when I think about who needs to have a better performance, I think Matt Corral can be okay and still impact and influence the game. I think Jefferson has to hit the home runs. Has to. If Jefferson isn't able to connect with Treylon Burks, I don't know how Arkansas scores, quite honestly. I mean, look at Georgia's defense. Georgia's defense is a generational defense. When you're facing a generational defense, you have to have a quarterback that has a great game, a signature game, a showcase game. So, yes, Ole Miss probably needs Matt Corral to be great to have a chance against Alabama. But I think given their rushing attack, you could theoretically stay in it for a while if you rely on your running game. I think Arkansas, to score on Georgia, you're going to have some 20, 30, 40-plus yard pass conversions. So because of that, I will say Jefferson.
I couldn't agree more, BJ. I do think it is going to have to be KJ Jefferson because this has to be one of those games for him. When you want to be able to have success, I know you got Burks, I know you got that defense, but it's going to have to be KJ Jefferson, BJ making some throws to kind of keep him in the game, making some of those one-on-one 50-50 ball throws, the Treylon Burks, or maybe even an unsung hero that's kind of probably going to make a name for themselves coming out of the game that we didn't know about going into the game. Matt Corral is a guy that's seen Alabama before. He understands what they're going to be trying to do to him, but he doesn't have to have a superhuman effort. He just has to play within the confines of what he does. And what Matt Corral brings to the table is more than enough to go out there and be successful against any team, even if it is Alabama. But for KJ Jefferson, he's going to have to go to another place to be able to say, man, this might have to be the best game I play all year. I know they still got a lot of the schedule left. Definitely got the SEC West schedule to look forward to. But like you said, BJ, I'm not going up against the University of Georgia team. I'm going up against this University of Georgia historic defense. And the more he makes plays, the better he plays. He builds confidence. That's going to be dangerous for a Georgia team that really, really hasn't been tested all year. So it's going to be KJ Jefferson. I know, fair or unfair, right, wrong, indifferent. This is why you play in the SEC, and you're going up against a team. You're not just Arkansas. You're the number 8 Arkansas Razorback. So yeah, for me, it's going to be KJ Jefferson. Continue doing what he's been doing. He respects Georgia. I don't know. I'm pretty sure he doesn't fear them. And if he goes out there and make a big play in the first quarter, BJ, how much confidence does that build for him, and how much dangerous does that make him for a Georgia team that just ran to go against him? But yeah, I'm going to go with KJ.
The only correct answer for me is Matt Corral. In order to beat Alabama, you have to be different. Notable quarterbacks: John Manziel, different. Deshaun Watson, different. Joe Burrow, different. Those guys were like different players in college, some of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen. And I just don't think you could beat Alabama running the football. We saw Florida just rush for over 250 and they still lost. We've seen Georgia do it in the past with Todd Gurley as a freshman in the SEC championship, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel being able to run the ball but still can't win the game. Matt Corral, he has to go in there and put on a sensational performance. He can't go in there and throw, 3 touchdowns and 2 picks. That's a 14-point loss. You got to go in there, and it has to be 4 touchdowns, 5 picks. He has to have a huge game. That's the only way you can beat Bama. You have to have that type of quarterback to come in there and put up a big game. So I'm going to go Matt Corral just because of that sake. It's on the road as well. This is big. Take 3. Which game will be closer, Arkansas State at Georgia Southern or Arkansas at Georgia?
I think it's Georgia Southern, Arkansas State. I think you're going to see, just a competitive effort, an emotional effort from Georgia Southern. Arkansas State has one of the better offenses in the Sun Belt, but they're 1-3 overall. They've struggled some defensively. I think there will be opportunities for Georgia Southern to make plays. And I have a hard time, and we've talked about it a couple of days now, but if you can't get the ball to Treylon Burks, and he may not be 100% healthy, I don't know how Arkansas scores against Georgia. Now, can you get a couple of big plays defensively? Can you get a couple of big plays special teams-wise? Field position, a huge deal when you're playing an elite defense. But I think Treylon Burks has to be the guy that has a huge game. And if Georgia's able to double him or whatever they can do, it may be tough for Arkansas to get to 21, 24 points. I mean, that would be a monumental effort given what we've seen Georgia do. I think you'll see a competitive game between Georgia Southern and Arkansas State. Georgia Southern is a program with a lot of pride, a program that always has high expectations, and I think they're going to give it a great effort on Saturday. So I'll go Georgia Southern, Arkansas State.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Georgia Southern, Arkansas State as well, BJ, but for a different reason. When you look at what the Georgia Southern football team has had to endure in the last week, I mean, obviously answering questions about their teammate, answering questions about their coach who's no longer with them, trying to figure out how do they stay competitive in a very, very, very challenging Sun Belt conference. But I think it's going to be close, BJ, because I think James Blackman, for which we're going to talk about a little bit more later, is a guy that can definitely put pressure on a Georgia Southern defense that's down their best defender. And when you were a student athlete in college, you have to juggle a lot. From expectations of on and off the field, being a brand ambassador, the social media world that we're in, and now I got to deal with the fact that I'm going into it with my head coach is done. We went viral for the wrong reasons. We can't seem to find a way to get back, to our winning ways. We are a tradition-rich program. That's a lot on a 18 to 24-year-old. So because of all the emotions going on this week, trying to just get back to just playing football, because football is a safe haven for most players, with so much that has affected that, I'm thinking it's going to be a closer game than it probably would have been had all things been equal. But yes, I'm going to go Arkansas State and Georgia Southern.
I'm going to have to go Arkansas, Georgia. I seen Georgia week 1 against Clemson. That was hard to watch. It was fun to watch because we won. Georgia won, but it was hard to watch. The offense wasn't there. I don't know how good this Georgia offense is. Yes, you put up 62 against Vandy, 56 against UAB, 40 against South Carolina. That's great. That's fine. But none of those teams are world beaters. They're not, great teams. Can you do that against a top 10 opponent who, quite frankly, their defense is pretty good? If you watch them play, they held Texas A&M to 10 points, Texas to 21. They have a pretty good defense, and I think the line is 18, 19 points. That's a lot of points, man. I don't know if Georgia's going to score that many points to beat them by 18, 19. I could be wrong, but JT Daniels, he doesn't have a lot of reps this year, in my opinion. It's kind of back and forth with him and Stetson, even though Daniels is the number one. So I'm gonna go Georgia and Arkansas based off the fact I do not know what are we going to do on offense just yet. Haven't seen the running game yet.
I do agree with you. That's a big line. It's surprising when I saw that, and I think what it is it's a reflection of the respect people have for Georgia's defense. I think a lot of people are looking at this going, okay, is Arkansas going to get to 13, 14 points? So I think that's the key point there. But Arkansas State taking on Georgia Southern, Kara Ritchie of 95.3 The Ticket in Jonesboro. She will join us next, talk some Sun Belt football, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It has obviously been a week of transition for Georgia Southern football as the Eagles have moved on from Chad Lunsford. Kevin Whitley takes over as the interim head coach, and Georgia Southern takes on Arkansas State this weekend. And with us now to talk about the Red Wolves from 95.3 The Ticket in Jonesboro, Kara Ritchie. Kara, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, guys.
Thanks for coming on. So tell us about this Arkansas State team. You have obviously Butch Jones. You have former Florida State quarterback James Blackman making some plays. I know some high-scoring games for Arkansas State, but what have we seen out of the Red Wolves this season?
Well, so far this season from Arkansas State, I mean, it's a 1-3 team able to win their first game of the season against Central Arkansas, which is an FCS school. And the Red Wolves have been able to put up some points with the exception of week 3 when they went on the road and did not play well against Washington. But the bigger issue for A-State this year is that they just keep giving up points in chunks and chunks and chunks. And that's been a significant issue right now. And that's what's led to the 3 losses, is that this is a defense right now that cannot stop the explosive play. And they've had some issues containing the opponent's pass, the opponent's rush, just the opponent's everything. But Arkansas State can find some consistency with its offense. They're able to hang with anybody, but unfortunately, again, this time at this point, just have not been able to keep other teams out of the end zone.
What type of matchup do you think these guys pose, or what type of challenge do you think Arkansas State poses for a team like Georgia Southern, who's obviously dealing with a lot this week?
Well, one of the interesting things about this game is when you look at these teams statistically, it's kind of weakness against weakness. In terms of the defense, Georgia Southern has been really prone to the explosive play as well. And that is an area where Arkansas State can have success. With A-State, they haven't necessarily had the most consistent offense this season, but they have just a monster group of wide receivers. So this is a team that can absolutely capitalize on the explosive play themselves. And Georgia Southern is pretty poor against the pass in that aspect. As far as other aspects of the matchup, I don't put a lot of I don't see like the coaching change potentially favoring A-State. I think this is a Georgia Southern team that's going to come out and kind of have rallied together and present a united front and look really charged up and ready to go on Saturday.
We're chatting with Kara Ritchie here on 3 and Out. Georgia Southern hosting Arkansas State. I know we've seen a couple of quarterbacks. Of course, Lane Hatcher's had some big plays. James Blackman as well. What have we seen out of the quarterback position for Arkansas State, and what type of playmaking ability has James Blackman brought to the team in the program?
Well, whenever you've got a situation where you've got 2 good quarterbacks, you always kind of have a competition or a controversy for the fans, however you want to describe it. We've seen Lane Hatcher have so much success over the past couple of years, but Butch Jones has said repeatedly that he loves James Blackman's leadership. He feels like James Blackman has done a little bit better in practice, and Jones is a big how you practice is how you play guy. So because of that, it's led him to turn to Blackman for the past couple of games to get the starting nod. With Blackman, I feel like of the 2 guys, he's got a little bit of the stronger arm. In fact, at the end of the game against Memphis, he came out and almost rallied the Red Wolves to a comeback win, and he was just completing bombs down the field. A-State was almost able to pull it off on a Hail Mary on the final play, but unfortunately Memphis coming out on top in that one. But with these guys, with Blackman, he's got the talent, no doubt, to make some big plays. But one of the issues he's had over the past couple of games is staying upright. He was sacked 6 times in the loss at Tulsa and was hit a total of 19 times. So I still feel like we're trying to see a little, or that we've yet to see all of his playmaking ability, because I don't think he's gotten 100% comfortable behind his offensive line yet.
Butch Jones is obviously a guy that's very, very well traveled. I mean, coached at a lot of big time programs. What have been early impressions on him and still a very, very young season?
Well, with Butch Jones, I mean, you can tell he's been at some high profile schools. You can tell he's been at Tennessee. You can tell he's worked with Nick Saban, because he's kind of guarded and very measured with what he says. He's not about to go off the cuff with anything or start throwing out crazy stories or zingers or one-liners. He's very deliberate in what he says. So because of that, he kind of coach speaks a little bit and finds kind of different ways to say the same thing. But with that being said, one of the things that I've noticed since he got to campus in December, and especially throughout spring camp and fall camp, was how much players have taken on his personality And when they say things, you kind of believe it, because a coach is going to talk a certain way, but a player is not going to be able to. They don't sugarcoat things as much. They don't try and give you any misdirection. What they say is how they feel. And these players throughout the spring, throughout the fall, have all been very bought into the process that Butch Jones is wanting to use in Jonesboro. Of course, that's the big Alabama phrase, is going through the process. But the players have been very in tune with that. And the things they say, they echo their head coach, but you can tell that they believe in what he has been trying to sell since he's been on campus. And they believe that if they follow that process, they're going to be able to find success.
Kara Ritchie, 95.3 The Ticket in Jonesboro, previewing Arkansas State and Georgia Southern. What are the expectations? Because you think about Arkansas State, been one of the more successful, clearly, G5 programs in the country. What are the expectations? I know off to a 1-3 start, and can this team still realize those this season?
Well, I think the objective for this year, coming off a disappointing season last year where Arkansas State went 4-8, I think the hope this year was to get back to a bowl game. Last year with this team, we saw some significant issues, mainly the fact that Arkansas State really struggled on defense last year, and this was more than a Band-Aid situation, more than a situation that Butch Jones was going to be able to come in and just fix quickly. It's going to take a couple recruiting cycles probably. And this team also went through a defensive scheme change. So they recruited to a 3-down defense for a couple of years, and now they're trying to get back to the 4-down defense. So it's just been a little bit of a work in progress. But that being said, this is a fan base that, saw this team win a Sun Belt Conference championship in 2011, 12, 13, 15, 16. They expect success. I think the goal right now is just to see progress each week under Jones. And I do think this team can still get back into a bowl game this season, but they've got to win 5 out of 8 in Sun Belt Conference play. And that's not going to be easy with teams like Coastal Carolina, the Raging Cajuns, and App State on the schedule.
I mean, even sticking with a team like Coastal Carolina, you see what they're doing right now in the Sun Belt. But this Sun Belt Conference, top to bottom, you got really, really good competition, regardless of what division you on. Louisiana, App State, Georgia Southern, Georgia State. But they're looking to expand. I heard some rumblings saying they're looking to expand the Sun Belt. As far as the reputation, of this conference, how much bigger can they get? And just talk about the competition, top to bottom in this conference.
Sure. Well, I don't think there's a league in the country that took more advantage of a screwed up year in 2020 than the Sun Belt did, because it went from, a league where you could only find games on maybe Wednesday or Thursday nights, and they would be on ESPNU and be going up in competition against, Thursday night football in the NFL, and then another prestigious college game, and there just weren't a ton of eyeballs on the product. Well, last year, not only did you have great teams in Coastal Carolina and the Cajuns and App and some others as well, but these teams have to be on in front of eyeballs that have probably never watched a lot of Sun Belt football before. For example, that Coastal Carolina BYU game last year, not only was it was one of the best games of the season, it was one of the funnest games of the season. It came together in such a weird way, but then it totally delivered. So then the Sun Belt really rose to the occasion there and in so many other games. As far as how the conference could look to expand, you have to look at money. You always have to look at money when it comes to stuff like this. The Sun Belt just recently re-upped their grant of rights with ESPN until I think maybe 2030 or 2031. So it would be cool for the league to expand, and you certainly want to expand as opposed to like we've seen in some other conferences. But is the contract with ESPN going to be negotiated? Because if not, you're just bringing in more mouths for the same amount of money, and I don't know if that's necessarily something that anybody would want to do. But if you give a little bit more money, then yeah, let's see the same chance at least 12 or maybe even 14 teams.
Kara Ritchie, 95.3 The Ticket in Jonesboro, talking Arkansas State, getting ready for Georgia Southern. Kara, thank you for the time. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Hey, appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me. Y'all have a great weekend. We'll see ya.
And this is a game, Ben, she mentioned she expects to see a fired up Georgia Southern team, a team that responds to what was a difficult couple of days. And, as always, a difficult transition when you go from a head coach in the middle of the season in a new direction. But obviously Kevin Whitley, the interim, is extremely well respected, extremely accomplished. How do you think Georgia? I mean, how do we know what to expect from the Eagles this Saturday?
You don't. But I will say this. I mean, you talk about BJ. You talk about Coach Willie, him being well respected. He understands when it's always great when you had a guy that played at the same university or college that he's coaching at. But when you plays, you understand what players go through, and you know how to adjust. Obviously, the bottom line is the bottom line. Winning and losing is the bottom line. But showing empathy in a time like this is what these players need. Because the world will treat you as a robot. The world will treat you as something that they cheer for. The world will, treat you as an entertainment object. We all do it. And I'm not saying that I don't do it. But sometimes you need to know it's going to be all right moving forward, because a lot of these guys got recruited by Coach Lunsford, thought they would be coached by Coach Lunsford, and a lot of these young men just realized that the business of football always supersedes the game itself. So I expect those guys to come out fired up, BJ. I expect those guys to come out to play for each other. And I expect to be a 4-quarter football game. Georgia Southern is a tradition-rich program. As we spoke to Jared Binko early in the week, BJ, athletic director for Georgia Southern, and I think those guys are going to play a spirited team, not just for their lost coach, but for their teammate. Remember, their teammate is no longer with the team right now, so you want to play for him. You want to let him know, listen, while you're not with us, we still love you as a teammate. So I expect a very, very motivated football game. BJ, who knows, man, might help him get one in the win column this week.
Georgia Southern, Arkansas State, and a couple of teams looking for a win in the Sun Belt Conference. We'll come back. We'll talk Georgia, Arkansas, a top 10 matchup in Athens. What are the expectations for Georgia? That coming next. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. All right, I have to tell everybody, Ben, what you're doing during the break, okay? And Cam may not like this, okay? But you've been coming to your desk where you have a Florida Gator media guide from the national championship game, last national championship, okay? So it is a big, thick media guide with a trophy on the front and national championship. And you've been pretending like, and I don't know who you've been doing this for or why, but you've been pretending like you're on camera and you're reading the media guide and you look up and go, no, Georgia doesn't have one of these. And you're just, and it's only me and you in here when you come in here. So what exactly are you doing? And why are you mocking Georgia behind closed doors for no one to see except me?
Well, obviously, I mean, nothing I do around you behind closed doors is safe. But reading is fundamental.
I'm saying it's like this. It's like this. Yeah, I'm like, no, Georgia doesn't have one of these. Yeah, I mean,
number one, I'm just catching up on some reading. I haven't read as much as I would like, and sometimes, BJ, I be forgetting just how many guys was on that 2008 team. I just want to go back and say, and I'm really looking at the training staff. I'm looking at the equipment guys. I'm looking at people behind the scenes. I'm not even looking at the players. I mean, the people remember who the players are, but all I'm saying is, if Georgia does indeed break the drought, that hasn't happened since 1980. I mean, nobody in the station right now was born the last time Georgia won it. Not you, not me.
Well, I mean, you're the oldest one here. So if anybody was close, you were close. But yeah, nobody here.
Ain't nobody asked you to tell nobody what I was doing. I'm saying wasn't nobody here old. I mean, even born the last time we seen it happen. No, I'm not trying to troll Georgia. We need to stop that. Georgia's gonna have 2 1,500-yard receivers. Georgia's quarterback is gonna win the Heisman. Georgia is a really, really good team. That's what they are. I don't got to troll anybody. Don't listen. If anybody need me and you want to say something to me, holler at me at Biscuits and Gravy on all social media platforms. Anything you got to say, holler at me at Biscuits and Gravy, and we can talk about it.
That's right. That is your social media at _Biscuits and Gravy. All right, Georgia. Here's what's amazing about Georgia. Even including the Clemson game, which was 10-3, the average final score of Georgia's games through the first month of the season, 42-6. That has been the average final score, 42-6 for the Dogs. Does a team like Georgia, which has clearly emerged as a national championship frontrunner, did they have to have style points week to week? And here's what I mean by that. BJ Bennett with Ben Troop and Cam Ushery, and I want to get y'all's perspective. If Georgia wins this game 20-19, will the national response be, yeah, I understand it's a top 10 team, but it's Arkansas? Does Georgia, because they're being compared to Alabama and being evaluated basically side by side with Alabama, need to win this game by 18, 20 points? That's what the spread is. If Georgia wins 14-13, is that enough?
It's enough. I mean, to solidify themselves as still the number 2 team in the country, BJ. But certain teams got built their narratives, right? If you're Alabama, as long as you win, it doesn't matter how it looks, and the better the team looks against you kind of shows that, oh, the team gets credit for, hey, man, they actually go out there and compete with Alabama. If you're Georgia, it's how good is Georgia really? Because it happens every year, right? Georgia doesn't lose that much in the regular season. I mean, last year, kind of was an anomaly. I mean, Kirby Smart doesn't lose 1, maybe 2 games a year after his first year at Georgia. But when Georgia loses, BJ, we have to go back and reevaluate who they played and how they played. So if Georgia if it is a close game, it's far less about the fact that Georgia got the win. It's far more about it wasn't dominant. And sometimes when you look at the way this defense is playing with Georgia, with the offense, that's why they're getting it done. It's not really anything to go home about. I mean, when you look at the fact that teams are playing, I mean, J.J. Jenkins playing in one quarter, Stetson Bennett is playing, Carson Beck is playing. They don't really have a go-to receiver. I mean, whoever the hot hand is, a running back that day is who they're going to get most of the carries. But yes, BJ, Georgia has to pass the eye test. You know why? Because people are hearing about Georgia nationally, not geographically, nationally. So now, okay, if this Georgia team, how good are they? And if you're looking at the box score and at the end of the game, and it was a 21-19 win, Georgia, is it Arkansas has bridged the gap? Or is Georgia a good team, good enough to beat anybody they play, as long as it's a team that don't meet the talent threshold? So, yes, do they have to pass the eye test, get the cool points or whatever? Yes, I do indeed think that's built into their storyline.
BJ, Ben, in Kirby Smart's tenure, he hasn't gone undefeated yet. So It's always a
Hey,
slippage
Cam,
every year.
it's really interesting you bring that up because while Ben was kind of indirectly talking about just facts and championships, Cam, you bring up going undefeated. Hey, Ben, when's the last time Florida went undefeated? Just out of curiosity.
Florida's never going undefeated. But are we talking about things? I mean, obviously talking about things that happened when I was and when I wasn't alive. Florida has never gone undefeated since I've been alive, and Georgia has never won a natty since I've ever been alive. So I'm happy that you're asking these questions. AD, in Babylon times. But it's fine. It happens.
Look, I can't get mad at you guys for taking Jazz at Georgia. It's okay. We deserve it. We deserve it, or rightfully so. They've had teams in the past, but getting back on track, they haven't went undefeated yet. It's always slippage every single year. I remember they lost homecoming to South Carolina, that early noon game, a bad South Carolina team. I want to say went 4-8 that year, a really bad team. Man, this is tough to say. If they win 2019 against Arkansas, I'm actually happy because one, it's a win. Two, you're showing progression. And the reason why I say you're showing progression, it's a win, but you're also showing you can win those type of games. Even if you're having an off game, you can still win. I think this week will show you kind of where Georgia's at, but the real barometer test, and people don't want to admit it because they don't think they're a good team. I'm not discounting them. It's Auburn. And it's not because you're playing that Auburn team, you're playing them at Jordan Hare. And in my opinion, that's one of the top 5 toughest places to play in college football. I don't care who you are in big time games. And Georgia, them winning games, if they beat Arkansas by 1, Auburn by 5, and Florida by 3 points, I'm the happiest fan on earth because guess what? We're undefeated now. I don't think anybody else is going to give us a real test. We're undefeated for the rest of the season, and we're going to the college football playoffs. And Kirby Smart has never done that. I think everybody wants these top teams to just blow out whoever they're playing, and it's unrealistic because there is talent in college football, and we have parity this year. Clemson's made it how many years in a row? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Clemson has made 6 years in a row.
6 years in a row. They're not making it this year. Ohio State, they make it. They probably won't make it this year. They take one more L, they're not going to make it. You're going to see Alabama because that's Nick Saban. He's building a factory. But Georgia, they're just building something different this year. I hope they can handle business. But winning, we have to remember winning is a big thing of college football in these rankings, and people need to come back to the realization of that.
I think in reality, to your point, a win over Arkansas, regardless of if it's 1 point, 3 points, 4 points, is a really good win. Arkansas played Texas. They beat them by 19. Arkansas played Texas A&M. They doubled them 20-10, doubled them in scoring. This is a team that has played 2 nationally ranked teams, Texas A&M and Texas. You know how many seconds they trailed in those games combined? That'd be 0 seconds. Yeah, Arkansas led the whole way through against Texas, the whole way through against Texas A&M. This is a good team. And in reality, especially in league play, you beat a top 10, a top 15 team. That's a quality win. But I don't think the perception will be that way if Georgia barely wins. And I understand your point too, Cam, about, look, at some point you're going to have to win a game ugly. You're going to have to win a game that's a defensive slugfest. And until you do it, those can be tricky. That can be a little nerve-wracking and a little out of character when you're winning games 40-3 every week. So I do think Georgia at some point is going to have one of those wins. But maybe I'm wrong. I think if Georgia wins 20-19, given that the standard is not what Georgia has been in the past, the standard is not how does Georgia compare to other teams. The standard is how does Georgia compare to Alabama? That is the expectation this year. And I think that if Georgia wins 20-19, assuming Alabama wins by, a comfortable margin, I think people will say, yeah, but what will that type of effort result in maybe in the SEC championship game? So it's always a battle of perception versus reality. To me, given the high expectations that Georgia has embraced, and I like that. I like that you're saying, hey, we expect pressure's a privilege. We expect to play for it all. I think, Ben, if it's a close game, if it's 1 point game, 3 point game for a spread that is 18.5, I think the national response will be, yeah, but look at what Alabama's doing.
BJ, isn't that fair though? I mean, isn't that like what's supposed to happen when you talk about a team like Georgia, who is one of the 8 to 10 teams every year before you even kick the ball off that has an opportunity to actually compete for a college football national championship? Georgia understands now that it's not so much how you look against teams that you're supposed to beat. It's how you look against teams that can meet the talent threshold. We think that Georgia is so miles and miles ahead of the guys they play against, and that's not true. I think what happens is when Georgia does lose, it's in dramatic fashion. So I think this game is setting up to be a lot closer than we give it credit for, BJ. But if you're Georgia, how much do you really know about yourself when you're dominating everybody? How much do you really know about yourself when the guy in front of you is just not better than you? How much do you really know about yourself? Excuse me. When you think about the fact that you got obviously big time postseason aspirations, but I do agree. Fair or unfair, right, wrong, indifferent when it comes to the Georgia Bulldogs. You know the legacy that you're trying to surpass, and that's who's going to be that team to win the national championship. Your regular season is great. Going to the ACC championship game is great. Winning the East is great. If you're not the last team standing, it's gonna be adding to that year because BJ, when we talk about tradition, the tradition at Georgia right now is 41 years. And that's not to say that Georgia isn't a great program, right? Well, think about it, BJ. I mean, because if you really start looking around, you're going to say to yourself, okay, if they are who they say they are, you got to prove it. And the only way to prove it is to be the top dog. They get a chance to add to that this weekend when they get them Arkansas Razorbacks.
College football world will be watching ESPN Game Day there, obviously Saturday morning in Athens. Georgia, Arkansas, a top 10 matchup. We'll come back with more 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Thursday night football in the ACC tonight, and it's an ACC Coastal game, which means who knows? It's impossible to kind of get a sense for who's good, who's not good in the ACC Coastal, but you have Miami and Virginia tonight, and this is a great quarterback matchup. De'Aaron King for Miami. You're talking about Brennan Armstrong for Virginia, guys that have put up huge numbers throughout their career. But to me, we've talked about this a number of times, but to me, college football is better when Miami's relevant, when Miami's good. And I don't think they're where Florida State is. When you look in the ACC, Florida State's got a lot of work to do. Miami's been nationally relevant in recent years. I mean, they were ranked in the preseason top 15. And Ben, I know you played Miami and just got wow. What? I was trying to think of the right word. I was trying to be respect. I mean, you guys just got
we almost beat them my senior year, but we lost.
No, you guys just got destroyed. But to me, college football is better when Miami is good and nationally relevant.
BJ, hasn't it been the curious case of Miami for a long time now? I'm not blaming Manny Diaz. I know they got Ed Reed back in the building. I mean, what do you think it is? Because De'Aaron King, I mean, essentially what he was supposed to do, he did. He elevated reputation, but obviously people remember him most from, ACL and when North Carolina came to town last year. So what is it about Miami? Do you think they're trying to pay for what they used to be? Because they're never going to be that. Like a USC, they're never going to be that. But Miami is good enough to be relevant, but not great enough to stay there. I mean, is that a realistic, assumption when you talk about a Miami team, BJ, that we're seasoned enough to have seen them during their glory years?
What's interesting, you said this before, I don't know that the current kind of recruits remember, or they obviously weren't watching those games in the early 2000s, but I don't know that they have that same awareness of Miami's iconic greatness that we do. When I think about growing up watching Miami football, it was not, are they going to win? It was like with some of your matchups, it was how much are they going to win by? Is it going to be 20 or 30? I mean, the 01 and 02 teams from 2000 up through 02, those three teams were probably among the 10 greatest teams I've ever seen, and Hall of Famers all over the place. So that's not a realistic standard. That can't be the standard. College football is different now, but I think, can Miami still be nationally relevant? Yes. Can they be what they were? I would say this to Miami, to Florida State, to Nebraska, to SC. The dynasty eras that we saw in the 80s and 90s, I don't know that that's practical anymore. And we see it with Alabama. So maybe the counter to you can't have a dynasty anymore for those programs that had those in the 80s and 90s is, well, Alabama has one. Alabama's every year. It's not a matter of if, it's how many points are they going to beat you by. But I think for programs like Miami, who goes tonight against Virginia and Florida State, you have to focus on consistent success before consistent dominance. But a big game tonight in the ACC Atlantic, Virginia taking on Miami. And as Kevin says with the ACC Atlantic, who knows? Who knows? We'll come back with more 3 and Out, ESPNCoastal.com. Get excited. The Jacksonville Jaguars, primetime tonight, Thursday Night Football. Don't give me that look, Ben Troop. It's the Jacksonville Jaguars in prime time. The nation will be watching as they take on the Cincinnati Bengals. And look, it's Trevor Lawrence versus Joe Burrow. And I think that's exciting. Back here with you, 3 and Out, Hour 3, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop, Cam Ushery. This is an opportunity you want to take advantage of if you're the Jaguars. You're not making the playoffs. You're still in transition, but you don't yet have a win. And I think if you can play well in a national spotlight game, prime time, that's good for the confidence of a young team. Cam mentioned something earlier in the show. We keep saying that Trevor Lawrence hasn't won a game in the NFL. Well, neither is Urban Meyer. So you need confidence at the top. You need it with your star player who's never dealt with losing like this before. But I wanted to get your thoughts on something, Ben, with Trevor Lawrence, because a lot of people are talking about not only is he 0-3, but he's got 7 interceptions through 3 games. Could he break Peyton Manning's interception record? Maybe, maybe not. But I don't know that Jacksonville and Urban Meyer I don't know that he's been introduced in the right way, because just logically thinking about, okay, rookie quarterback, not a great offensive line. Even with the injury to Travis Etienne, unfortunately, you have really good players at the running back position. Why are they not leaning on James Robinson to use Trevor as a complementary piece offensively to a downhill running game with one of the better running backs in the NFL? I bring that up because entering tonight, Trevor Lawrence is in the top 10 in pass attempts in the National Football League. Right now, Trevor Lawrence has more pass attempts than Matt Ryan, than Dak Prescott, and then Patrick Mahomes. You're kind of opening the door for interceptions. Why is he being introduced as one of the more focused on, utilized, dependent upon quarterbacks in the National Football League? Why are they not easing him into things, focusing more on James Robinson here, Ben?
BJ, because I think sometimes, I mean, we be looking at things from the wrong angle. When you look at a guy like Urban Meyer, right? And I hate to use this phrase, BJ, he's got to have a fall guy. He really does. Urban Meyer is not good at taking criticism when his team underwhelms. He don't want to be the blame. He don't want to be the focal point of negativity when his team is not performing well. You mentioned James Robinson. The greatest thing Peyton Manning did have his rookie year was Marshall Faulk. Now, it didn't keep him from throwing interceptions, but you had a guy that you can lean on. You can lean on James Robinson. He's a guy that has proven I'm a good player, undrafted rookie, by the way, on a bad team. Trevor Lawrence, you're using him up. If you have more passing attempts than guys that are seasoned in the NFL, that shows that, one, you don't trust the guys around him, and two, Trevor Lawrence doesn't have to live up to the hype in year one. Nobody foresaw Peyton Manning's legacy did not take a hit because of his rookie year. People still thought that he was going to be an incredible player, and obviously his numbers and his career speaks for itself. But BJ, sometimes overthinking and doing too much always leads to losses. Trevor Lawrence throwing the football, he's going to trust his arm more than throwing the ball away, dumping the ball down to James Robinson. So I think that for me, it's Urban Meyer rather say, well, look, it's like I mean, and I'm not trying to pile on, but it's like Jim Nagy right now in Justin Fields. People are thinking that Jim Nagy is sacrificing or sabotaging Justin Fields' career. It's your job as a head coach to put your star quarterback in the best possible position to be successful. And if that means less throws, more runs to help the betterment of the team, that's what you're going to do. Trevor Lawrence is going to be the headliner regardless. You think Jacksonville is getting a Thursday night game? If a guy like Trevor Lawrence isn't there with a guy like Joe, I just think for me, when you start talking about the National Football League, it's a business. Your job is to be able to try to put together the best players you can to try to be able to have the best records you can. Trevor Lawrence has Laviska Shenault, DJ Chark, Marvin Jones, a guy in James Robinson, but yet they're not utilizing those. You're not utilizing those guys correctly, because while as a former receiver, I would love to have the ball thrown to me. That's just box score watching. It's like Blake Bortles, BJ. Blake Bortles' best individual season, the games was already over when he padded those stats. But people are looking, oh, he had a good year. Did he? Because it's about to win the game matters. So I do agree, BJ. They're not using Trevor Lawrence right, because it's like you got to live up to the number one pick every single game, and you don't have to do that. Number one picks elevate the status quo of a franchise. It's not about how many. It ain't even about the losses, BJ, or the interceptions. It's when you play this team, How many times is the quarterback on the other team better than your guy? And most guys aren't better than him. It doesn't mean he's a worse player than them, but most guys in the NFL are like subpar quarterbacks. It's an upper echelon. You got mid-tier, you got everybody else. I think Trevor Lawrence is a mid-tier quarterback right now. If they keep utilizing him the way they utilize BJ, by the time he's worth anything, he's gonna be used up.
Yeah, this has been perplexing to me in a couple of different ways. And I get that football is a quarterback-driven sport. I get that the quarterbacks are the superstars and that in today's game you throw it all over the place. But this is confusing for a couple of reasons. One, James Robinson might be your best player. I know you have Josh Allen, but James Robinson might be your best player on your team. Had a great rookie year, undrafted out of Illinois State. And you want to give your best player the most opportunities you can. And that doesn't just mean running the ball, but I think throwing the ball to James Robinson. You haven't seen a ton of that either. And I also think this is exaggerating the pressure and the responsibility on Trevor Lawrence. There's so much hype. The expectations were absurd. I mean, you go back a couple of months ago, people were saying, yeah, the Jaguars with Lawrence, they're going to make the playoffs. And we're thinking, there are a lot of questions on this roster, but he's being talked about as one of the faces of the league. Like you mentioned, Jacksonville's on national TV now because of Trevor Lawrence. He's got one of the best-selling jerseys in the National Football League. He's a superstar. Whether he's earned that or whether his play is worthy of that, he is. He's one of the more recognizable players in the league. And that's a lot of pressure to deal with when you're 21 years old, when you're new, when you and your head coach are new at this level. And I think to go out there and ask him to throw it 45 or 50 times a game, that only magnifies that. And Ben, I don't know, maybe there's something to just jumping in right away and addressing, dealing with it all at once and not delaying the inevitable. Maybe there's something to that. But I think given that you're turning and starting to a high profile, you're turning to and starting a high profile rookie right away, that you'd kind of want to try to protect him as best you can. And I mean that on the field by not having him throw the ball 50 times, and off the field by kind of lessening the responsibility that he has. And perhaps that's not realistic, but to me, just kind of handling Trevor the way they have and saying, go out and throw it 40, 45, 50 times, more pass attempts than Matt Ryan, more pass attempts than Patrick Mahomes. In your first 3 games, I don't think that's been the right approach.
That isn't an approach. That's them thinking that Trevor Lawrence can get him that BJ based on what he has shown in high school and in college, right? And look, the one thing that this has everything to do with Urban. You don't have the best player anymore. You got the best player in the 2021 draft. You don't have the best team anymore. You're just a team in the National Football League and arguably the most unrecognizable division and maybe the worst division in football. It's Urban having to understand there is a level that you got to coach up to, just like there's a level that Trevor Lawrence has to play up to. Some of these intercepts that Trevor Lawrence is trying to fit in are deep go routes on the sideline, one-on-one against some of the best cover corners in the world. So I do agree, BJ. When you start thinking about strategy, you have to have one. When you start talking about a plan, you might have to go to plan B. Plan A can't be your end-all, be-all. The great Herm Edwards said this best. A plan that can't be adjusted is a bad one, a really, really bad one. And, BJ, because you're starting to see the game, BJ, for more than what the game is. You're supposed to be looking at the plays, the play calls, the situations, and now you're saying, why are they throwing the ball so much? Why is this a usual theme? And that's not a winnable, that's not a strategy that is sustainable. And that's what you really want. I want dependability, right, through sustainability that helps ultimately elevate, in a sense to where help me elevate my team. And Urban Meyer, he seems to be very stubborn because James Robinson looks like a guy who's not a good player when he was voted the top 100 player by the players. So out of all the players, and to me, that's probably the most significant thing in the NFL outside of being an all-pro. Not a Pro Bowler, but an all-pro. So I do think that when I watch Urban Meyer, I don't think he's doing it maliciously. But if you're not helping your star player utilize his instincts to help the team, he's just out there. And I know that Trevor Lawrence is a guy, BJ, that's supremely talented, supremely gifted. But Trevor Lawrence is used to having the best surrounding cast in college football around him, not named Alabama, not named Georgia, Ohio State, Oklahoma. Now he just has a supporting cast, and they're doing all they can to support him. But if the head man ain't making the best decision to talk with the offensive coordinator to put your star player in the best possible position, BJ, not only this is going to be a long season, ask Joe Burrow what happened when they utilize you with a shaky offensive line at best.
That's a fair point. I mean, look at Joe Burrow last year. And with Lawrence and Burrow, there is some history tonight. This is the first starting quarterback matchup between national championship winning quarterbacks since Vince Young and Matt Leinart back in 2009. And this is just the second starting quarterback matchup in the common era of the previous two number one overall picks. So because of that, I think there's going to be this magnetic pull to, make it Joe versus Trevor. That's all it is tonight, Joe versus Trevor. And that's easy to identify with. These are two of the stars, college football superstars that won national championships. But if I'm Jacksonville tonight, if I'm the Jaguars, I am looking at my offensive line. I need you to set the tone. We're going to run the ball. We're going to play physical. James Robinson is going to be the focal point, and Trevor Lawrence, even if it doesn't fit the lead in the narrative of it's Trevor versus Joe, I think you have to let James Robinson establish things tonight. Because, Ben, doesn't it directly kind of play against your strengths? You don't have a great offensive line. You have a defense that's a work in progress. If you come out and throw it 45 times, doesn't it make those issues worse?
Yes, BJ, because you put more pressure the goal is to put pressure on the defense, not add more pressure to the offense for which you are trying to help go out there and be an efficient offense. Whatever you lack as an offensive line obviously limits you what you could do collectively as an offense. But when you are limiting your best player because you're utilizing his usage rate shouldn't be this high already. It should not. He's thrown the ball more in 3 games, BJ, than most guys don't throw in 6 games. So this is the thing. Do you throw less because it's hurt his effectiveness, or do you throw less because it helps the team? I am not a head coach. I just understand that the best strategy is utilizing everybody. And this is the problem with Urban. Urban doesn't believe that James Robinson is his best player. He thinks Trevor Lawrence is. Because if he didn't, James Robinson would have more carries at the end of the day, and his usage rate would be high. So we'll see, BJ. Like I said, you adjust the numbers gonna be able to speak for themselves as far as like how you adjust. But Urban Meyer, he has to get off who he used to be. The Urban Meyer in college is gone. The Urban Meyer in the NFL, not so good.
Mike Griffith, Dog Nation, will join us in about 30 minutes to talk Georgia and Arkansas. Plenty of football talk still to come as well. But when we come back, the Braves looking to clinch. That's 4 in a row if they get it done. The magic number's 1, so you need either 1 Braves win or 1 Phillies loss, and you have the division. And, of course, you could take care of that tonight. So we'll talk about that next. 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network, ESPN Coastal.com. The Atlanta Braves can win the National League East yet again tonight. Very impressive if they can get the win. Ian Anderson on the mound taking on the Philadelphia Phillies. And once more, the magic number is 1. So if the Braves, I'm not even talking about tonight. I'm not going to say what the opposite of winning is. I'm not going to speak that into existence. But if it doesn't go as hoped or planned tonight in the upcoming final series of the regular season, 1 Philadelphia loss to Miami or 1 Braves win against the Mets would mean the Braves win the division. But it'd be really nice to just get it done at home tonight. Ian Anderson on the mound. And Ben, I have to give you credit. You've been consistent throughout the season. You said, look, they're going to win the division. Kevin and I have been a little more inconsistent with our confidence, but you've been right there. And I think they get it done tonight. Philadelphia knows it's going to take something mathematically unlikely for them to win the division. The Braves at home, Ian Anderson on the mound. Atlanta, I think, 8-2 in their last 10. The Braves are playing great baseball. I think they win a 4th straight NL East title tonight.
Very, very impressed, BJ, with the job that this Braves team has done. And, BJ, it goes back to what we saying all the time. I mean, you got to trust in Alex Anthopoulos. You got to trust in Snit. I mean, you got 2 guys that, when you think about it, those 2 guys really working well with each other. I mean, Snit really trusting Alex Anthopoulos to really be able to put this team together, even during turmoil, I guess that's how you want to say, or, bad times. And I just think that, BJ, when you is this, and I know I've been saying this since Snit and Alex Anthopoulos has been joined at the hip, has a guy in the front office like Alex Anthopoulos, with everything he had to deal with, FBI agents walking by him when he's taking over. Have you seen, now obviously they haven't won a World Series, but have you had a guy that's had this much success, and a guy that was looked upon to come in and reshape things? But BJ, no Mike Soroka, no Marcell Ozuna, no Ronald Acuna Jr., a team that went win-loss all season. Will Smith is obviously gonna get ran out there. An infield that's probably as good as we've ever seen. Dansby Swanson doing something, at shortstop we haven't seen ever in a Braves uniform. 2 MVP candidates in Austin Riley and Freddie Freed. And to control your own destiny, BJ, when you were chasing the Mets, then when you caught the Mets, then the Phillies were chasing you. With everything that has happened this season, to be in this position, I mean, BJ, the Braves got to be one of the most, if not the most dangerous team when they do indeed clinch the playoffs, right?
And he did a great job at the trade deadline, bringing back Adam Duvall, who leads the National League in RBI, had another one last night, was a logical move, and it has paid dividends. I think Jorge Soler has been incredible. The numbers since he's become a Brave, very, very impressive as well. And home run power right there. He can bat lead off, as we've seen a couple of times, can certainly bat in the middle of the order. So you love what Anthopoulos has done. And I think this is a team that believes, a team that's confident. From the outside looking in, when you had the Acuna injury, so many fans and media members alike looked at it and thought, okay, this is the best player in baseball, arguably, maybe outside of Mike Trout. How do you overcome that? You can't replace Ronald Acuna. And then beyond even just Duvall and Soler, you bring in Jock Peterson. And Jock Peterson had a key home run a couple of nights ago. Anthopoulos was able to not replace Ronald Acuna. That doesn't happen, but bring in guys who could help replace his production collectively. And you've seen that to a certain extent, and it's a big reason why Atlanta's in a position to win a 4th straight division title. But also, look, shout out to the starting pitchers, too. Mike Soroka, when we got the news earlier in the year that we weren't going to see him this season, people looked around and went, man, is Max Fried ready to be the one? What are we going to see out of Charlie Morton? Is Ian Anderson ready to be a front end of the rotation type guy? Who's gonna cover it up on the back end? Waskari Noah had an early season injury, and the starting rotation has been great. Charlie Morton had a championship effort the other night when he started. Max Fried, slow start to begin with. He's been tremendous down the stretch. Ian Anderson, what an opportunity for Ian Anderson tonight. You're a young guy still, and a chance to go out and clinch a division. So the team has responded to the Acuna injury across the board. The bullpen, it gets weird, it gets interesting with Will Smith, but Tyler Matzik has been really good. You've had guys you can trust emerge in various roles. I think this is a team that believes. I think this is a team that wants to get it done tonight. It's not quite the same if you clinch on the road in New York compared to at home in front of your home fans. I think Ian Anderson gives the Braves a strong start. I think the bats stay hot, and I think they get it done and celebrate tonight.
BJ, all I'm going to say is, when you talk about, I go off your optimism or lack thereof, because you are the only person that started the very first game of the season. Braves not looking too good. I understand we got 162 more of these. 161 more of these things, but I like the pessimistic BJ. Like, I don't know, man. Each game counts the same. I'm just saying, this Braves team has stood the test of time. There's something about a winning culture that not even a Ronald Acuna Jr. ACL tear can like mess that up. And that's what I be talking about. That's what Alex Anthopoulos said. Look, I got Freddie Freed, the consummate professional. I got the young superstar in Ronald Acuna Jr. I got pitchers like Ian Anderson, like a Mike Soroka. I got young stars like Austin Riley. I got a guy that's coming into his own, Dansby Swanson. I got an all-star, Isaac Albies. I just think that the fact that they did not panic, because BJ, I keep going back to when Acuna got hurt. I was like, that's it. It's over. But did they get better? When Ronald Acuna Jr. got hurt, I'm not saying you're replacing his star power. I'm not saying that. But BJ, when I can lean on Freddie Free and Ronald every night, you take Ronald out the lineup, I believe, man, this team got better, and they obviously only gonna get better in 2022. But you just can't say enough about a Braves team, BJ, that said, look, we don't want to leave our fate to wild cards. We want to control our own destiny. We want to go for that 4P.
And everybody stepped up, to your point. Ozzie Albies, Austin Riley, Travis d'Arnaud, Adam Duvall, Jorge Soler. You've seen just contributions from everywhere. And Atlanta trying to wrap it up tonight. Hopefully they get it done. But even if they don't, still plenty of time. It will take a lot, quite frankly, for Atlanta to not win the division. We'll come back. Georgia, Arkansas this weekend. Geno Toretta, former Heisman Trophy winner, going to be on the call on the Touchdown Radio Network for that one. We'll hear from him next. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. 10 contest.
I think it shows. I think it shows, BJ. I mean, just how much teams that don't play Georgia benefit from them. Arkansas is a team that is obviously, overperforming right now. BJ. I mean, listen, we all are overachievers in some regard. So I'm not trying to come down on Arkansas, but I think that's what makes this game kind of more dangerous to me for a Georgia team, because aren't we waiting, BJ? Aren't we waiting for Georgia to look human on defense? Aren't we waiting for Georgia to kind of look like they got some kinks in the armor? Because what we don't talk about enough with the Georgia team is the better offense this weekend is Arkansas. The better defense this weekend is Georgia. The better skill position player on offense is Arkansas. The better overall team might be Arkansas. Now that doesn't mean they're gonna win the game. I'm talking about, I'm talking about like shoulda, coulda, wouldas. But I think that's why Kirby Smart coaches the way he coaches. People go, why is he so like uptight all the time and never comfortable? And you see why, BJ. I mean, think about it. I believe Florida benefited last year from a Georgia team because you know what it takes not to beat them, but to compete with them. So yeah, I do think there's gonna be more of a dangerous team than we give the credit for, BJ. But I will say this: Georgia doesn't look down the road. Georgia does have an Alabama vibe to it as far as like how they prepare for a team. BJ, I don't think we are appreciating what Sam Pittman is doing. I mean, is Sam Pittman on a Dan Mullen type run? Because Dan Mullen got to be the head coach at Florida because of what he did at Mississippi State. You got to respect that.
Yeah, and Sam Pittman, obviously former offensive line coach and assistant head coach at the University of Georgia, so probably going to be an emotional game for him. But with us now to talk about it, we'll be on the call of Arkansas, Georgia on the Touchdown Radio Network coming up this weekend. One of the great players in college football history, the 1992 Heisman Trophy winner, two-time national champion, college football Hall of Famer, the great Geno Toretta with us on the program. Geno, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Doing wonderful. So Arkansas, Georgia, a top 10 matchup nationally. I mean, we've seen Georgia maybe even exceed expectations through the first month. In your mind, what's been the biggest key for Arkansas, and what type of team are they bringing to Athens on Saturday?
Well, I think what we're seeing, especially not just with Arkansas, probably some other teams in college football, I think you're seeing the benefit of transfers, the transfer portal, if you will. You're also seeing the benefit of the super seniors, players that are good players that have an extra year to come back, and that experience makes a world of difference. And I think that Sam Pittman has stuck to his guns. He's got some great offensive linemen. That's his roots as the O-line coach. They pound the ball on the ground. And Barry Odom, has always been a great defensive mind when he was the DC at Missouri before he was the head coach. So I think they've benefited from some of those transfers in, and Sam's done a nice job recruiting, so he had a good base, and then you get the super seniors to stick around, so they've got a lot more experienced group than they had in the past.
Geno, the quarterback position, I mean, from the time you played till now, when you look at how much more is on these guys, you talk about the super seniors, but is there more pressure on these quarterbacks now? Obviously, you look at these wide open offenses with the spread offense, but how much more pressure is on these quarterbacks who not just come ready out of high school, but come ready to kind of get these teams to the promised land?
Well, the crazy thing now is just the amount of pressure they put on the kids, not to just be, hey, you can be an option quarterback. It used to be, hey, the guys at Oklahoma and Nebraska, they ran the wishbone and they ran it well, and maybe the passing game lacked. Guys that came to Miami, Florida State, we were drop back and we were throwing the ball. Now you have to be equally adept at being able to run the RPO speed option, as well as being able to sit in the pocket and delivering balls down the field. I think that one thing that they've done with the speeding up of the number of plays, we used to run probably 65 plays in a game, and we thought that was successful, and it was most of the time. But these guys are running almost 100 plays a game, and they're trying to just essentially run plays so fast that defenses can't substitute. They kind of makes it very simplified from the standpoint, empty the backfield. Defense can't disguise a lot when you're in no backs or one backs like we used to. But they put a lot of pressure on the quarterbacks now just because I can remember doing games with Lamar Jackson, and he'd rip off a 60-yard run, and he had to be exhausted. And if that was a running back, he'd probably hit his helmet and say, hey, I need a breather. If it was a wideout made a big catch, he'd hit his helmet, I need a breather. The quarterbacks never get to hit their helmet and say, hey, I need a breather for a couple plays. So the conditioning of the quarterback is also just amazing to me right now.
And talking about the quarterbacks, Georgia's JT Daniels entered the season with Heisman Trophy talk. Has been good. Clearly, Georgia's dominating everybody they play. What do you see when you watch JT Daniels, and does he need to be a guy on Saturday that maybe has that 300-yard passing game?
Well, I think I don't know if he needs to have a 300-yard game. I think Georgia's got an unbelievably talented backfield, so I think they want to pound it and run it first. I think. Also, he only played one quarter last week against Vanderbilt. Now he has a lat injury. He had an oblique injury, which I would have to assume that the oblique has influenced the lat, and that can't be good. It can't be pain-free throwing the ball with a lat injury. So I think that he's got some issues there. I think Henderson on the other side of the ball, or Jefferson on the other side of the ball, he's got issues as well. I mean, he's a little banged up. So both these quarterbacks kind of come into this game banged up. I think that Arkansas has to rely on Jefferson having a big game, whereas Georgia's defense is so good. I think Daniels can be manage the game, not turn the ball over, and I think they have personnel that's right up there with Alabama, which is better than most of college football right now.
Geno, what the evolution of college football? I mean, obviously you're going to be on the call this week when you talk about Arkansas and Georgia, but how much bigger can college football get? You look at the fact that Oklahoma and Texas coming over to the SEC. I think the biggest. I mean, I never ever thought I would be watching coaches in college, making $8, $9, some $10, $11 million a year. How much bigger can college football get? And are we already, on our way there?
I think we're definitely already on our way there. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I think Dennis Erickson might have made a couple $100,000 before he left Miami to go to Seattle. It was always the big money was in the NFL, but college football is right there. You have, now we have the Power 5 conferences, so it's kind of like those schools and those 5 conferences they're going to dominate the money coming in from TV, but you look at it, it's just the content around college football. I mean, people can't get enough of it. People can't get enough of the Saturday games. You can't get enough of talking about the games the next Saturday. Who's going to win the Heisman Trophy? Who's going to be the first pick in the NFL draft? But I think that's all part of it, and I'm also happy that the players now with NIL can actually make a few dollars and be able to buy themselves a couple nice dinners while they're in school.
The legendary Geno Toretta here with us on 3 and Out, and college football this season. You've seen some upsets at the top. Ohio State already has a loss. Of course, Clemson has not looked good. A couple of losses. We've seen the same programs dominate college football during the playoff era. Certainly, Alabama is still the favorite. Georgia, who we'll see this weekend in a top 10 game right there. But do you think there's maybe room for some new names this season, ultimately, in the college football playoff based on this start to the season?
Well, I think we'd have to say that, right? I mean, with Clemson already having lost twice and one of them to NC State, Ohio State with the home loss to Oregon. So you would expect probably some names that aren't in there, that haven't been in there in the last few years. I think that's also the great thing about college football is we normally had that. I think before probably the last, I say the pre-Saban era where he's in it every single year, there was a lot of turnover at the top. And when teams, lost their star quarterback or their star defensive players, you had a drop-off. And Saban has just been phenomenal. He's lost quarterbacks, he's lost players, defensively, offensively, he's turned over coaching staff probably 5 or 6 times, and is still right there competing for a national championship every year. But that is, an anomaly, and I think that's what we're seeing kind of with Clemson. You lose Trevor Lawrence, first pick of the NFL draft. Travis Etienne, probably one of their best players the last several years. Running back, also a first-round pick. You lose those 2 players, very hard to replace him. And I think that that's kind of what we're seeing at Clemson. Why there's a bit of a drop off. It takes time to learn offenses, learn nuances of it, and just play the game. It's different when there's live bullets flying around on Saturdays between the white lines. But I think that's why, to me, college football delivers every single Saturday. Things that you think are odds makers, thinking somebody's a 2-touchdown favorite and they lose at home. I mean, that's college football in its finest.
College Football Hall of Famer Geno Toretta, our guest here on 3 and Out with the Touchdown Radio Network. You will hear Georgia and Arkansas coming up this weekend. Geno, thank you much. Thank you so much for the time. Enjoy the game on Saturday.
Anytime. Looking forward to it.
And it's going to be a heck of a game. I do think, to Geno's point there, Ben, Arkansas probably needs the big play. Arkansas probably needs the big play more than Georgia. I think if this game is low scoring, that plays right into Georgia's hands. Like Geno was talking about, a dominant defense. I think you have incredible depth at the running back position. I don't know that you have to have, like I asked, 300 yards from JT Daniels. You can control the game with your defense, field position, and running game. Arkansas's got to have a home run or two. Arkansas's got to have a couple of big plays. Schematically, let's be Sam Pittman for a minute. Schematically, how do you try? I mean, how do you move the football against this defense?
Dan Lanning, BJ, DC, defensive coordinator for Georgia is definitely gonna come. He's gonna come with some pressure. He's gonna force you to do what you want to do quicker than you want to do it. I mean, Jefferson and Burks, man, they got to be electric. They don't necessarily have to go for over 100 yards for Burks and those guys. I mean, Burks and Jefferson, but BJ, the Stars got the line. You already know who the best players are for Arkansas, and they got to go out there and make it happen. So if you are Sam Pittman, you telling Jefferson, look, if you see one-on-one with Darion Kendrick and Drake, you got to go out there and convert to it. You got to go try to give us some 50-50 balls. But I think if you're Arkansas, don't overthink it. Like, I think we put too much on, the fact that Arkansas, forget where they're at now. What did it take to get here? This is years in the making to even be in the top 10, BJ. So let's give these guys credit for making this game worth watching outside of the fact it's Georgia and Arkansas, a top 10 matchup. But if you are Georgia, you want to still be on your P's and Q's, BJ, because what we're seeing from the Georgia defense, it's on a historical level. And I know what they did last week against Vanderbilt is you just shake your head. But if you are Arkansas, BJ, play loose. You let your instincts take over, and if you could just make some drives last a little longer than you wanted to, that might play in your favor because it's going to be. I mean, you talking about the defense is about as stingy as I've seen in a long time for them Georgia Bulldogs.
Number 1 team in the country, they have a tough game. Number 2 team in the country, as we've talked about, they have a tough game. Could one of them be an upset? Could both of them be an upset in the SEC? We'll discuss that next. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Ben, it's just amazing, man, your passion for Jacksonville Jaguars football. I know that you're ready for the tailgate. You know, you want to make sure that you're focused. Jags and Bengals tonight. You want to be ready to go. You're looking ahead to the college football weekend. We'll get to that. But just your excitement, your energy around Jacksonville and Cincinnati being a primetime game is just, yeah, I'm with you, man. I appreciate it. I can respect it.
I mean, somewhere the Titans are saying, well, thanks a lot, Cincinnati, for taking us away from Thursday Night Football, BJ, because usually that's what we have to see, right? The Mustards versus the Smurfs, right? It'd be the color rush. But no, BJ, credit the NFL. I mean, the NFL gets to highlight two young superstars, two former number one overall picks. I mean, the number one overall pick in 20 and 21, one of the best national championship games we've seen in a while, BJ, in 2019. But just like RG3 and I can't even think of it. His name just popped out of my head. I mean, what's the number one overall pick, BJ, from I can't even think of, from US Stanford? What's his name?
This is awesome watching you not know. Just go ahead.
Well, anyway, just like
Andrew Luck
and Vince Young, you got two guys, BJ. They're gonna compare their careers, and Andrew Luck and RG3. We're gonna get a chance to watch some good football. But BJ, something you said I'm gonna be watching for. I'm gonna be watching just like a good pitcher, like Strasburg with the Nats. I'm gonna see the quote pitch count when it comes to your boy Trevor, BJ, because the whole thing about it is you can wear him out. When you talk about how many throws he gets during the week and how many throws he gets during the game, I think it's going to be something to watch for, but I think it's going to be a more compelling game. Watch out for that Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow connection, because BJ, your Jacksonville Jaguars just traded C.J. Henderson to them Panthers. I'm pretty sure they're going to pick on whoever his replacement is.
That's right. Big SEC Saturday coming up. You think about Arkansas, Georgia at noon. You look at Alabama, Ole Miss at 3:30, and you have Florida, Kentucky at 6. Then Auburn and LSU at 9. It lines up at just SEC football, SEC football, SEC football, SEC football, noon to midnight. Do you think it gets weird? Do you think we see some upsets? And could one of those be in Lexington, or do you think it's going to go chalk this weekend?
I don't think it's going to go chalk, BJ. I think we need to stop acting as if these teams aren't making huge strides like a Kentucky, like Arkansas. And BJ, look, we be the ones talking about how it doesn't chaos. We watch for 2 reasons, or 3 reasons. Your team win, the team you can't stand to lose, and chaos. We might get all 3 this weekend, but yes, BJ, I think we're going to be coming out of week 4 the same way we've been the first 3 weeks. As much as we think we know, we let the games predict themselves, and we know the unpredictability is why we watch, why we cheer, why we love it. I can't wait. Looking forward to week 4.
Yeah, and I think this is the time in the season where you really start to kind of see what you have with some of these teams. The first few weeks can be a little volatile, and then you think about maybe a non-conference game that isn't a great test. I think now you see what you have. Now you can separate the contenders from the pretenders. Now you can start to identify the teams that are legitimately top 10, top 15 teams. You go back to the early polls, and of course, Clemson was right up there. Iowa State was right up there. North Carolina was right up there. Miami was right up there. LSU. So I think you're to the point in the season, especially with these games on Saturday, where you feel good about maybe making a prediction with some conviction for later in the season. But it's going to be a lot of fun. Did want to mention this. We haven't talked about it. How good of a weekend is it in the SEC if we haven't even talked about Auburn LSU?
BJ, at the end of the day, Auburn LSU should be a good one. I'm looking forward to it. But long as them Gators get that dub this weekend, it should be a good weekend. But we'll see.
That's that. And welcome to my world. You ask a question about Auburn and LSU, you get the response of as long as the Gators get that. That's going to be a tight game Saturday night. Look,
I ain't going to be watching.
And don't text Derek Abney either, because last time he saw you boys, it was what? A kick to the house, a punt to the house, and a touchdown. I'm just saying, one of the all-time greats.
Derek Abney better be lucky, man, that I wasn't really on my game that game. But you know, he got the hat trick. That guy, his last name was Abney and not Bennett, first name BJ. I could better stand you now. If you gave 3 touchdowns against my Gators, couldn't work here.
Have a great night. Hopefully the Braves clinch and we have some football to enjoy this weekend. We will see you tomorrow, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, ESPNCoastal.com.